Hey, good morning. Here I am back in my favorite place at Preferred RV Resort with Dottie. And this video is a response to many of the comments that I've been getting in response to a short that I did on an unauthorized charge that went through my Citibank MasterCard. And people had a lot of questions about it. And I realize this is a big topic for everyone, but in particular for nomads. We're reliant on credit cards and debit cards, and we travel with them all over the country, and we use them in unfamiliar spots. We're giving our information out quite a bit when we're stopping at RV parks, and we just seem a little bit more vulnerable than most people, and certainly in this way more vulnerable than people in sticks and bricks, because if you do have a problem on your credit card and it needs to be canceled and they issue a new one, they're not going to send you a credit card to where you are if you're traveling full time. They're going to send it to your billing address. And so it's going to be that much longer that you'll have to go without a credit card, especially if you don't have a backup. So I'm going to talk to you about all the ways you can be ripped off and the things that you can do to protect yourself. The source of this information is twofold. Some recent experience I've had, but many of you don't know because I've had no reason to talk about this. But literally, the first 2 decades of my business career was in consumer finance, where I worked for a large department store chain in Southern California. I worked for Neiman Marcus stores. I worked for Kay Jewelers, and I worked for Dell. And they all had to do with issuing private credit cards through them. So I was exposed to that industry for a long time, and I know a lot about it. Now, things have changed since I was in that business, but I've pretty much caught up with the changes. So how can you get ripped off? Well, the scariest way, we'll get to credit cards in a minute, but the scariest way to get ripped off is when someone is able to go into your bank account and just pull money out of your bank account. Your bank may or may not be helpful in returning those funds to you. Certainly it won't happen right away. And that is probably the most frightening thing that can happen to any of us on the road, is getting our cash wiped out of a checking account. So how can you prevent that? Well, there are a couple of ways. Most of you are going to be engaged in online banking, and you want to make sure that you have the strongest security possible that your bank offers to how to get into and initiate transactions in your bank account. You've probably heard about the concept of two-factor authentication. That means in order to get access to your account, you log in with a password, and it sends you a text with usually a 6-digit code that you input from that text into the banking software, and that's the second factor. And that seems, gee, that's really super safe. How could anything possibly go wrong with that? Well, not much could go wrong with that in maybe 90% of the cases, but maybe 1 out of every 10 or maybe less. There's a problem with that. There's a new thing that's going on where the crooks are finding a way to hijack. I'm smiling because there's a little bridge right in front of me behind the camera, and there's 3 ducks that were starting to cross the bridge, and they saw Dottie sitting here, and they stopped. I swear to God, they had a conversation, and they turned around, went back the other way, and went into the little river here on the back way. So that was pretty funny. Anyway, back to serious stuff. Here's how they get around that. It's rare, but it happens, and you should know that it happens. If I have access to, let's say you have a Verizon phone. You got a phone, it's a Verizon, it doesn't matter whether it's Verizon or T-Mobile, I'm just using Verizon as an example. And I have access to the Verizon system through an employee in a store, maybe, or someone, an employee of Verizon. I can get your phone number taken off your phone, off your SIM, and put on another SIM. What does that mean? It means that if I can get that transfer done in the Verizon system, the other phone that I have becomes your phone number. And I can, if I somehow engineered your password into your Bank of America account, and the two-factor authentication is not going to go to your phone anymore, it's going to go to the crook's phone because they have taken over your phone number. And they can get in and they can wipe your account out. Well, the first sign of that on your end is suddenly, without warning, your phone is going to stop working. It won't connect. It'll have a message on there like SIM not activated, right? And your instinct will be to find a way to contact Verizon to find out what the hell is going on with my phone and what's happened. And you will likely spend a good deal amount of time on the phone you and Verizon trying to unravel what happened. In the meantime, your bank account is being drained. So if it ever happens to me, if I pick up my phone and SIM's not activated, I'm calling my bank immediately and I'm saying, my phone has been compromised. Have there been any recent transactions? Hopefully they'll say no. And I'll say, we need to deactivate the two-factor authentication or take my phone, do whatever it takes for the bank to stop transactions from happening until you figure this out. What happens to so many people is they spend all their time trying to figure out what happened with their phone. In the meantime, their bank account's been drained and they don't know it until it's too late. The other thing that I do is there is a way to put a PIN code on your SIM to prevent it from being transferred. And there's settings in iPhone that I have it set up so every time my phone reboots, it says to activate the SIM, you have to put in the code. And if I went to a Verizon store to try to transfer it, I would need that code, and the crook would need that code, so it prevents them from doing this SIM transfer. I don't know for sure that that can't be overridden by a Verizon employee that maybe is in the pocket of a crook. I have no idea. But I will warn you about this. Last winter, I told a friend of mine about this, and he had an iPhone 2, a little bit older than mine, and he went to put a PIN on his SIM. I don't know what happened, but it ended up crashing his phone service, and he actually ended up having to get a new number, and he wasn't really happy with me. So I suggested you research how to do the code for your SIM, that you do adequate research with that before you pull the trigger and do it. It was easy for me, I didn't have a problem, but my friend had big problems. So one of the things that I did, I logged on to my bank account and I made sure that I had the maximum security possible on my account. And I've done that. The other thing that people have asked me about is the transaction that came through the other day that I did my short on was, I suddenly found out there was a transaction on my account for like almost $4,000, like $3,900 and change. And it wasn't the fraud department of the bank that notified me. It was in Citibank, there's a way to set up, I want to be notified every time there's a transaction over X dollar amount. And I had mine set $500. So I got an email sending, just as a matter of course, here's a transaction that went through as you requested, it's over 500. And I saw it and I'm like, I know that's not me. So it wasn't that the credit card company or anybody got suspicious and notified me. I had that set up, and I don't know if every bank has that, but definitely Citibank has it. And so I immediately went online, and online you can dispute the transaction and you put in everything and it freezes it. And if a transaction went through and they didn't follow all the procedures, they're going to get charged back, and it's, I wasn't worried because I knew it was easy to prove it wasn't me, and it wasn't me. The most logical explanation, given what's going on here in Pahrump, how my card got compromised, is people here have told me there's a big problem with what they call card skimmers at gas stations. What is that? Well, you know how in a gas pump you stick your card in the slot to swipe it or to put in your credit card information? Well, there are devices that attach to the outside of it that look totally normal, that your card goes through that into the pump and everything seems normal, except that little device does a reading of your credit card information. It stores it on a little chip, and the person that put that there after a few days comes by, takes it off, and they've got everyone that put their card through there, they've got that information. So because it was such a big deal for so long in Pahrump, I was asked, hey, have you filled up with gas here? And I said, yeah, I did once at Smith's. The grocery store has gas pumps, and I filled up once since I've been there. So that's the most likely way. The other way is if you do things like you get a bank statement or something and you're not really interested in it and you throw them in the trash, there are people that go through dumpsters looking for bank statements. And if they find your credit card bank statement, guess what? It's got your name, it's got your address, it's got your credit card number. It may or may, I'm not sure whether mine has the expiration date, but it has enough often to initiate a transaction with somebody. So anyway, I never got charged for this. I did talk to the company. It showed me the name of the company that processed the transaction. I talked to them, and it was a person that, not my name. So, and they didn't take any, like the 3-digit security code that's on the back of your card that you've probably been asked for. They didn't get that. They didn't do any of those things. They didn't release the merchandise either, so no one lost anything. But it was scary that someone had my credit card and was trying to use it. Well, here's one of the things that I know about credit cards is there's federal law, a federal regulatory law that protects consumers from these kinds of transactions. And the law says if you have a transaction on your credit card, you have 60 days from the posting of that transaction to dispute it. 60 days, 2 full months. And while it's in dispute, you don't have to pay anything. Nothing counts against you. And trust me, if it wasn't you that made the transaction, the credit card company will figure that out. And if merchandise was released, they'll charge back the merchant, not you. And you are covered as long as you're using a consumer credit card. Why do I say it like that? Because often we open a checking account and we get a card that looks like a credit card, but I'm sure most of you know that's a debit card. And a debit card takes money directly out of your checking account or savings account or whatever cash account it is attached to. It does not have the same protections as a credit card. And first off, if it happens, the money's gone out of your account. You don't have access to it. And it's very rare for your bank to put that money back in when you call and say that wasn't me. Often they'll do an investigation and they'll put the money back in, but not until after they do the investigation. So if your account gets wiped out by one of these transactions, you may get your money back, but in the meantime, how are you gonna buy food? Your money's gone in the meantime. So I would very much limit the use of debit cards out there for fear that they're going to be used and you don't have the protection. Here's the other thing, and this is going to be only an issue for a small percentage of you. If you have a business like I do, and I have a business checking account and I have a business credit card, right? The business credit card the bank is not required to follow those same regulatory laws for consumer credit cards. They often do as a courtesy, but trust me, it's a courtesy. It's not a legal requirement. So we're back to, you need to be using a credit card that is a consumer credit card, not attached to a business, attached to you personally, and you'll be well protected. Okay? So, two-factor authentication, maximizing all the security features on logging into and getting access to your account, doing transactions. If you have the feature of notify me when there's a transaction over X dollar amount, use that, leverage that, so you know what's going on your accounts. You'll be fairly well protected there. And keep in mind this thing about, don't underestimate someone taking over your phone and subverting that two-factor authentication. So here's the other thing. For years, I'm sure you've heard about the whole concept of identity theft. And what is identity theft? It's when I get enough information about you so I can go apply for a credit card in your name, or any kind of loan, anything that takes a car loan, a consumer loan, a credit card. I'm going to use your information to open an account. I'm going to get the goods and services, and you're going to get the bill. And sometimes the first indication that you have is happening is you'll get a phone call or an email from a collection agency or from someone trying to collect a debt that you don't know anything about. I didn't apply for a credit card at Wells Fargo. Well, sir, we have it in your name here and it was opened and you owe us $3,000 and we haven't seen the payment. And so you will be motivated to go check what's on my credit report. So by law, the credit reporting agencies, and I'll explain more about credit reporting agencies in a minute, must provide you annually with a free credit report. And I think since COVID, it's more frequent than that, but the one I know for sure is they have to deliver you a copy of your credit report so you can see what's out there. Who's saying that you have accounts with them and how much money that you owe. They're not the easiest things in the world to read, but you can sort it out when you see it. And you can certainly spot stuff that doesn't belong to you. I'll warn you here, there are a lot of companies that want money from you to access your reports. Don't do it. You don't need it. I'll put in the description here the website that you go to get your free credit report, where you don't have to pay anybody to do it. So there's good news and bad news on that. When someone has stolen your identity, ultimately you're not going to be liable for any of these debts. That's the good news. The bad news, it can take months or sometimes over a year to clean this all up. You put in disputes you have to put in disputes with, there's 3 credit reporting agencies. You have to put in disputes with all 3 of them. They'll all pretty much have duplicate information. And when you put it in a dispute with someone that is reporting you as having an account that isn't yours, they need to prove it to the credit reporting agency that it was you. And what's often required is going to the company that opened the account in your name and do what's known as a fraud affidavit, where you swear under penalty of perjury that I did not open this account. You fill that all out, have it notarized, send it into there, their fraud department investigates it, and if they determine it was fraud, they'll remove it and take your name off it. But this stuff takes time. In the meantime, you'll have a mess of a credit report. You'll have a credit report that if you do take the time to contact all 3 credit reporting agencies, you'll have a credit report that just has a ton of disputes on it. And hopefully you've hit everything. You might not have hit everything. That your credit world will be a nightmare for months, if not over a year. And that's if you're diligently trying to correct this stuff. So, and it takes a ton of time and energy, and it takes an emotional toll on you. You don't want to be there. So here's some value I'm going to deliver to you. How do you prevent that? Well, there's a mechanism that well, let me just say, there's 3 national credit reporting agencies, and only 3 you need to worry about. That's Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. And I'm going to put their websites for those 3 companies in the description, because after you listen to me, I think you're going to need them. All 3 have the same mechanism where you can, quote, freeze your credit file. What does that mean? That means no merchant, no bank can access your credit information without you unfreezing the record. And you can go and you can unfreeze it for a date, a range of dates. If you are going to apply for a loan and there's a period of time where you know that bank or whatever is going to check your credit, you can unfreeze it for the amount of days that you think are reasonable for those. It's usually the same day you do the application, they're going to do the credit check. So you would go into each of these credit bureaus and say, for the 24th of November or the 24th through the 26th, open up my report so it can be accessed. And then after that, it closes back up. So you have control. So what happens is, if a crook gets your information and tries to apply for a loan, they're going to go back to the crook and say, your credit report's frozen. We can't process your application. So it protects you from identity theft. And it's free to do this. You have to do it, though, on all 3 credit reporting agencies. And for you, I did that this morning. And you can do it online on all 3. And 2 out of the 3 went smooth as silk. I did it online, not a problem. That was Experian and Equifax, smooth as silk. When I went to TransUnion, now this could be I made a mistake, but it has you create sort of an account. It doesn't ask you for money or anything. You create an account on all 3. And on TransUnion, I created an account, and I kept getting the message, unable to verify identity. And I went through the chat feature, I called, and it ended up being a chat and 2 phone calls before I got a person that was able to help me clear everything up, and I was able to accomplish that. It was an hour of my life I'm never going to get back. It could have been my fault, but here's another tidbit to know, that there's an identification verification that the credit reporting agencies use, and sometimes I think they're able to sell this routine to outside companies, where a copy of your credit report is pulled and they ask you multiple choice questions, and the answers are in your credit report. For example, in 2010, you applied for a car loan from A, Bank of America, B, Wells Fargo, C, XYZ Bank, and D, none of the above. Well, it knows on the credit report that there was a account opened in one of these, and if you correct the correct one, it doesn't match. And it'll ask you probably around 4 to 5 of these questions to make sure that you're familiar with what's on the credit report, because the crook wouldn't be familiar, and that verifies your identity. And keep in mind, many of the questions, at least a couple of them, are going to be, the answer is going to be like D or E, none of the above, because they throw a lot of herrings at you. So people that guess aren't going to get through the verification process. And it's possible with TransUnion, I failed that process somehow. I don't think I did, but I could have. So those are ways to protect yourself on the road. And I just realized one thing I didn't mention. If they have these skimmers, and they have these skimmers at gas pumps. Why? Because it's a place that people can put the skimmer on without being caught or observed. ATMs are another way too. One thing you can do is you can look at it, especially in an ATM. Does it look right? Does something look off about where I put my card in? And I would be fairly confident with ATMs that are in view of a business. So it's harder for someone to walk up and surreptitiously put one of these card readers on there. But the gas station pumps are a different story. That's why they're so common there, because there's no observation of someone doing this. So a way around this is you have that contact list where you tap your card, where you don't put your card in anyway. That bypasses that problem. And if that's not available, there's almost always going to be a person like in a booth or inside in a gas station. You can hand your card to them and have them do it, because there's not going to be a skimmer on their device. So those are ways to avoid that. And I tell you, after this experience, I'm really going to be vigilant about using my card at certainly unknown gas stations. And as nomads, that's all we do is unknown gas stations. We're traveling all over the place. So don't stick your card into a reader on a gas pump if you don't absolutely have to. Try to work your way around it. Now, there are more complex ways to use credit cards virtually, like through your phone, where there's services where you can create multiple credit card numbers to use for specific purposes. I don't know the details on that. I'm not going to get into it there, but there's certainly a lot of information about that on the web. The good news about that we got today is consumer credit cards, you're protected, but if it happens, if you get compromised, you're going to be without that credit card for maybe a long time, because they're going to mail that credit card to your billing address, which could be your mail service somewhere or wherever your home base is, and then someone there will have to send it to you on the road, and that could take a lot of time. So another thing to do is have an alternate credit card. There are plenty out there that don't have annual fees, or maybe have little tiny annual fees, that you can apply for and have as backup in case your main credit card gets compromised and you have that window where you're waiting for a new one. You've got a backup, right? And my old friend Deborah Dickinson, author Deborah Dickinson, her YouTube channel, I call her one of the OG van lifers and YouTubers. She always have a backup for your backup for your backup. That's her. After years and years on the road, she'll tell you over and over again, have backups for your backup, because too many times I've had just a backup and the backup didn't work and I needed a backup for my backup. So you want to have cash somewhere, you want to have your credit card, you want to have your backup credit card, and if you can figure out how to have two backup credit cards, get two backup credit cards. Have backups for your backup. What do you think, Dottie? Am I giving good advice here or no? He doesn't seem to care. But anyway, this is my big nomad advice for you, for myself, to keep our finances safe on the road. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll have it out to you pretty soon. And as always, I appreciate you taking the time to watch my videos. It means a lot to me. Thank you. Take care.